latest M. Night Shyamalan film, Trap, has dropped in theaters, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about the movie Trap? Now, M. Night Shyamalan is an interesting director because back in the late 90s, early zeros, he just had this incredible run of films that were big hits, celebrated. In fact, they put him on the cover of a magazine saying, "The next Spielberg." And then he kind of went off the rails there for a little while and started putting out movies like Avatar: The Last Airbender, After Earth, which just felt like they'd completely lost any of the creative juices that he once had. And then for the last 10 years, he's kind of settled into making kind of these mid-tier thrillers that have the big concept that hooks you a little bit, with very uneven results, some better than others. And this was another one of these mid-tier thrillers, high concept that he's going for. Is it on the better side, on the worse side? Let's talk about it. And right off the bat, as I just mentioned, M. Night Shyamalan is very good at coming up with these premises that just hook you. You hear it, you immediately go, oh, that sounds like fun, and this is no different. The idea of a serial killer takes his daughter to a concert only to discover it's one big gigantic trap to catch him. That's a fun, interesting premise, very straightforward. Now, I've heard a lot of people saying that what I just said is a spoiler for the movie. That is not a spoiler for the movie. That is the premise of the movie. That is the setup for the movie. As soon as the trailer dropped, like, did they just spoil the big twist that he's the killer? That's the premise of the movie. You can't say that the premise of the movie is a spoiler. That's the equivalent of saying it's a spoiler that the Avengers assemble in Avengers. No, that's just the basic setup of the film. This movie never tries to hide the fact that he's the killer. That's literally the starting point of everything that takes place. It is not a spoiler. Anyway, that's the end of my TED Talk. So now that we've established a few too many times that that's just the premise, it toys around with that a good bit, where you're seeing this complete psycho that has a daughter going back and forth between dad mode, neighbor mode, and psycho killer trying to escape mode. And all of his little manipulations, all of his little sleight of hand, the way that he watches things, navigates things, always trying to find the escape, always trying to manipulate things to gain control of all the situations. You're following the perspective of the serial killer throughout so much of the film, and that's just fun to watch a little bit. And the anchor that makes all of that work is Josh Hartnett and his performance, where, like, in the opening minutes, you're like, well, he's given kind of a weird performance here. And then you have kind of the moment where you start to see the real him pop out and realize that all the awkward, weird, cringe things that he's saying is because his character is playing normal dad. And so it always has this artificiality to it because it's artificial. A lot of the humor here reminded me of kind of the dialogue in the movie Signs. So if you liked that type of humor in Signs, there's more of it kind of here, maybe not as good, but that's what it reminded me of. And then some other stuff that is leaning heavier into cringe as he is trying to interact with his daughter. And you get to see the pretend side, and you get to see the psycho come out a little bit. And you have all these moments where he just kind of locks into his set crazy ways. The cut between the two personalities, his reaction to what's happening, some of it's just pretty funny. And the final thing I wanted to talk about here, the last 40 minutes of the movie kept me guessing. I did not know where it was going or how it was going to pull everything together or where it was going to land the ship. But like it got to a point in time where I was like, is this about to end? Is this movie really, really short, or did it just fly by? And then it keeps on going and you're like, oh, I see what's kind of going on here. And then I was like, wait, where is this going? And it did that about for the last 40 minutes of the film. I've seen some early reactions to the film say that that's where the movie completely lost them, is that, yeah, it felt like it got to the natural ending. I was like, cool, that was a good movie. And then it kept on going for 40 minutes. I kind of felt the opposite, that if it had ended at the point in time where it felt like it was going to end, the movie would have been just too flat. because it was so one note, repeating the same beat, and then the credits would roll, and it was the last 40 minutes was like, okay, I don't know where this is going. Now, we'll talk about some of the other reasons people had issues with this last section in the bad, but on the level of a movie like this, you want to have some element of like, it kept me guessing, where are we going? How's this all going to end? The last third of this movie very much did that for me. I went in with fairly modest expectations, just kind of wanting this mid-tier thriller. And I felt like that's what I got, like this high concept, mid-tier thriller. If you took the name M. Night Shyamalan off of it, I'd be like, yeah, that was like a fine little thriller. There's other things to talk about here, so let's move on to the mix. As we go into this, these are either things that aren't necessarily good or bad, they're just things to discuss, or they're things that are a little bit in that mixed category that they don't fit neatly into one or the other. First up, there is a mid-credit scene in the movie Trap. It's very early in the credits, so you don't have to stick around very long. It does follow up something in the film. It's a joke, but it's a joke that follows something up that's a question that's probably dangling in your mind as to, I wonder what happened with that, and then it pays it off with this mid-credit scene. Second one on here, I touched on this a little bit, but the movie is jam-packed with M. Night Shyamalan dialogue, where sometimes it feels like he writes very clunky mechanical dialogue, and there's some of the very unnatural conversations. And for me, it kind of fit a little bit better. It made a little bit more sense that you're having a bunch of very awkward interactions, because they should all be a little bit awkward. He's not actually that person. But I can see where a lot of people would leave the movie like, M. Night, go talk to a real person, work on your dialogue. What is this? Third one you gotta talk about here is one of the more overt examples of a nepotism film. I personally, like, people talk about Nepo babies and things like that. Like, I don't normally really care. But in the case of this movie, the plot of it is that a father-daughter go to a concert. Well, in the movie, the person at the concert is M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. So a big chunk of the film is pausing to have his daughter singing. You're watching M. Night Shyamalan trying to be like, see, I'm proud of my daughter. See, she can sing, she can dance, she could be a big pop star. And then later in the film, she does more acting. She has some actual scenes and stuff in the back half a little bit. And so it feels like he's trying to prop up his daughter to show off she can act. Now, totally fair. She can sing and she can act. Like, it's not like it cuts to her and it's like, oh dear, why did they like cast his daughter that can't act? Like, she can act. She's not holding back the film, but you are overtly watching M. Night Shyamalan try to put his daughter in front of you. Final one on here, the third act, or the moving goalpost. So, as I mentioned before, I appreciated the movie kept me guessing in the back half of the film. But a lot of other people were very frustrated by this because it felt like a moving goalpost. The movie sets up a clear objective and goal, and you get past that point, and the movie keeps on going. And so then the goalpost is unclear. Naturally, some people were frustrated by that, where they reached the point where they had that release, all right, we're done, and then it keeps on going. And some people don't like that. For me, it worked well enough. I kind of dug that. That was something I needed for the movie to have a little bit more variety to it. But the other side to it is, as the goalpost moves, it gets more and more like kind of ridiculous with some of this stuff. And so I think it kind of, there's people that it lost them in that process. So just go into it knowing, even if you like the first half, the back section might lose you a good bit. Or you might be like, the first part is a little bit monotonous, and then you go into the back half and you're like, okay, this is what I needed. That's what I experienced. But like, I've seen so many reactions that were the exact opposite of kind of my feeling on the film. From there, let's move on to the bad. And with the bad, I really just have one thing, but it's one big, gigantic thing that lingers over the entire film. And that's simply that you just have to suspend an enormous amount of disbelief the whole runtime. The whole film, you just have to be able to accept the movie's logic. And that the movie's logic does not correspond to real world logic at all. In the whole movie, there'll be these little things that'll happen where the guy that sells t-shirts like, yeah, come on back with me. And you're like, wait a minute, that would never happen at a concert. That's certainly not in the context of this movie with the heightened security. That would never happen. Or little things where he just happens to run in the right person, that the right thing happens, that there's a lot of this sort of like strained logic that drives the plot forward. And you could go through almost every major plot point in this movie where things shift, he escapes, this person does this, gets the upper hand. Most of them, you could just nitpick the logic of it. And if that's the way your brain is wired, you will be irritated by this entire film. You will be insulted by this entire film. You have to be able to go, all right, I'm just along for the ride. I want to see what M. Night Shyamalan is cooking. I want to go on this serial killer trying to escape ride. You just have to be able to do that. And if you can't, you won't like this movie. You will be irritated by this movie. For me, I was able to do that. But there was a lot of suspension of disbelief here. Real quick, before I give you my final thoughts, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about the film? Also, I did a ranking of all the M. Night Shyamalan films, I guess, at the beginning of last year. So if you want to hear my thoughts on all of his films, you can check that out right up here. In terms of M. Night Shyamalan films, for me, this one is right there in the middle. It's one of his least ambitious films, which means it doesn't reach the highest highs of his films, but it also doesn't swing and a miss like so many of his ambitious films that utterly flop with the big twist. This one, it's just kind of a fun little thriller right there in the middle, if you can accept its logic, which is a very big ask for some people. I'm fine with that, or at least was fine with it in this situation, so I had enough fun with it. Overall, it's a B on the entertainment scale of 7 out of 10, and this is one you can wait to stream, where there's nothing big and cinematic about the film, really. Likewise, it's a film that it's gonna split audiences, and it's a little bit safer if you stream it rather than pay a bunch of money, and potentially you don't really like it. Let me know your thoughts down below. Check out that M. Night ranking right over there, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.